And I have audio and video. Yay, that's important. All right. So, head, shoulders, knees, and toes. All right. So what the head's going to look like, hideous, hideous. All right, I'm going to do this from the side view. We're going to have a joint in each eyeball. So I'm going to draw two little circles, one for the right eyeball, one for the left eyeball. And that's going to go to the back of the head joint. That was awful. Let me just do that again. And we have another one back there, right? Okay, so it's going to go to this back of the head joint, right? We also have a mandible joint. Looks like a little red nose. And we're going to terminate out of each of these, right? So that's going to go there, and that's going to go there, and this one's going to go there, right? All from the back of the head. And then we create an actual jaw out of 4 joints, okay? We're going to create a base jaw joint, the bottom of the jaw, the end of the jaw, and its terminating joint, all from the back of the head. Like that and like that, okay? So this is going to be its point of rotation right here, just like your jaw. Talking about anatomy here. Why do we have this joint? Strictly for helping with skinning, okay? And we'll get to skinning after this, okay? So this is how the head's going to look. From the front, it'll basically look like this, connected to the back of the head. And then we'll have the mandible, and we'll have boom, boom, boom. I mean, it's like, it's hard to draw it from the front, right? So this is your how we're going to do it on the character, right? So we're going to do this from the back of the head. And again, for the eyeballs, we only need to do one side. Okay, so I have this selected. I'm going to use my create joint, right? Find the back of the head joint. I'm going to do this in a side view. And I'm going to hit 4 to activate wireframe because I need to place this joint in the dead center of the eyeball. So I'm going to go in here, find it. Somewhere right in here, give or take, right about there. Click. And then I'm going to go out the eyeball, through the pupil, like a giant stab. Technically, this joint can be a little bit farther out. So that's fine, okay? Now, the fact that I did this in the side view, I just created 2 joints. Okay. Like I said, got to take notes and come back to it. Okay. I just have too much to go over. Okay. So, like I said, when I'm creating these joints, it happens on the plane of the camera, on the grid, right? So even though this looks lined up, if I go to my perspective view, it's not. It's in the dead center of the character, right? Not a problem. All I have to do is go to like a top view. I hit 4 here. And in this case, I don't have to hold down D because I want this joint to follow with it. I'm just going to pull this over using my regular move tool and get that centered on this eyeball. And that's fine. We just want that nice and centered on the eyeball. So now I have to go back and do my mandible, right? The top jaw joint. So I'm going to go back to my side view. Select the back of the head again. Select my create joint tool again. And go to the top lip and out. Click, done. I don't have to do anything with this because this is where we want it. We want it to be in the center of the top lip. So this is fine. I'm simply going to select my joint creation tool again, select that back of the head, and this is where we make our actual jaw. Okay, so we do the back of the jaw, the base jaw joint. We go down here, down to the chin, and out. So, looking at how this looks in perspective, it looks like this. It's almost terrifying, isn't it? So again, all of these joints, this one, this one, this one, and this base jaw joint all connect to the back of the head, right? They don't connect to the neck. I get that all the time. Okay? They don't connect from the top of the head. I get that all the time. They connect to the back. Okay? So again, this, you know, when we actually move the jaw is going to go like that. Okay? Now, before we get into actually copying this over, we need to name our joints. Now, I want to show you a little trick. I'm going to minimize these so that we don't see all of our hierarchy. If I want to open up and see every joint in my hierarchy, I don't have to go click, 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 click to open it up, right? That's a pain. There's a couple of things I can do. I can select just the terminating joints. Click, 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 click. 5 clicks. And then hit F while my mouse is over the outliner. F as in Frank. Boom. And it pops open to those joints and shows everything up to it, right? All of the supporting joints. I could do that from any of these, right? If I minimize that and I select this one and hit F, it'll only go to that one, right? But that focus, F for focus, right, is a really nice way to get all of your joints showing, right? The other one is if I minimize all this, right, is if I select the main joint, I can do select hierarchy. That selects every joint in the hierarchy. And I can hit F again, and it has every joint selected, and I can pop that open. So this is a nice way to get into your outliner and see all your joints so you don't miss any of them. Now, when we name our joints, as I've said, we use basic programming naming conventions, right? So if I'm going to call this the spine joint, okay, we have multiple spine joints, so I need to number them, right? So I'm going to have spine underscore 01 underscore JNT, all lowercase, right? And I'm going to have spine underscore 02 underscore JNT, right? And all that stuff. When we get into our right and left side, like the elbow or shoulder, right? The shoulder is going to be shoulder. We have to designate a right or left side. So this is going to be underscore capital R for right, or underscore capital L for left, underscore JNT, right? We're always designating the type of object that we are creating, whether it's geo, control, group, joint, all that, right? That's always at the end. The designation between right and left is capitalized, right? If I have a multi-name joint, like the back of the head, back of head, right? Back is all lowercase. Of with a capital F, head with a capital H. Underscore JNT. We don't have to do left or right because it's a center joint, right? Same thing with top of head. Top of head underscore JNT, right? If we had multiple finger joints, right? We haven't done fingers, but if we did pinky, and we might do that one with pinky base, L, JNT, pinky mid, because we have multiple knuckles, L, JNT, pinky end, underscore L, underscore JNT. See what I mean? So the first word is lowercase, second word is capitalized on the first letter, then we have a capitalized right or left, and then we have the lowercase. And this is our naming conventions, right? Again, when you guys get into the industry, whether it's models, textures, controls, rig, bones, anything, whatever it happens to be, naming conventions are vital. Even file names, project directory names, right? This is why we teach you guys to do this stuff, is because if you don't follow this stuff, you can break the creation pipeline, right? If they're looking for a specific thing and you don't name it right, and they have automated processes set up based on the naming conventions, you can screw things up, right? So this is why this is so important. Okay, so we're going to name our joints, and it takes, you know, it's annoying. It takes time. Okay, this is our spine 01, right? And I can just double click through here, spine 01 underscore JNT. I can copy, paste, and change that to 02. Paste and go to 03. Paste and go to 04. This is the neck joint. Neck 01 JNT. And this can be either neck 02 or bottom of head, right? So I'm going to do neck 02, or you could do neck end, right? Either one would be fine. Neck 02. This is the back of the head, so I'm just going to do back of with capital O, head with capital H, and T. This is top of the head, top of head for JNT. And all of these terminating joints have done their job. We don't need them anymore. Delete. Right? What it is I'll get into that a little bit later, but I don't need that joint anymore. Right? This one is going to be eye right. Again, we're going based on the character's perspective. This is his right eye. Right? So this is going to be EYE underscore R underscore JNT. This is a terminating joint. We're going to delete that. I'll do that later. I want to show you guys why that is, right? This is the mandible. Mandible with an IBLE underscore JNT. Again, it's a center joint. We don't have to designate right or left. Terminating joint, I'm going to come back and delete later. Jaw base or jaw 01, either one. Jaw 01, JNT, jaw 02, underscore JNT, jaw end, underscore JNT, And then I have that terminating joint I'm going to come back and delete later. Then we have our clavicle. You can spell it out or just do clav, either one. Spell it out, clavicle, O1, JNT, clavicle, O2, or clavicle end, either one. Third one is the shoulder, not clav 3, not clav end. Shoulder. I get that all the time. Shoulder. Oh, and I forgot to do my right and left on my clavicle. So this is his right side, shoulder, R, J, and T. I need to go back and fix my clavicle. I usually do number and then side, right? Okay, so clav 01, clav 02, underscore R, underscore J and T. And there's my shoulder. And then my elbow, R, J and T. Wrist, R, J and T. And I'll just call this hand, R, J and T. And then we're going to terminate this final joint. We're going to delete it. Now, all of that naming, I'm just going to save as, because I don't want to have to do that again. This is version 2. Control Shift S for save as. So now, before we duplicate to the other side, there's some important things we need to take care of, right? For one, I need to make sure that all of my joints are oriented the right way, okay? And what this means is you see these little mini manipulator handles inside each joint, right? This shows the direction at which the joint is oriented, which basically means which direction will it rotate when you rotate it by default, okay? So if I select my shoulder, shift-click my elbow, and shift-click my wrist, and I use my Y rotate handle, and I rotate it in, what I should get is an arc in to where it's creating a nice semicircle of this arm, right? Okay. Again, if I'm testing this, I'm just showing you what this should look like. I select the shoulder, shift-click the elbow, shift-click the wrist, and rotate on Y, and it should create a nice arc. What could happen, and I'm going to create a problem, don't write this down. What could happen is if I shift-clicked these three, and I use my Y manipulator handle, and I rotate in, this could happen, right? This is bad oriented joints, right? That means that they are not facing the right way in their orientations, okay? And what you can see here, if you look dead center on this joint has X pointing to the next joint. Y is pointing up, and Z is pointing to the back of the joint. This has been rotated, so that's the back of the joint, right? This one, like I said, has Y pointing up. This one has Y pointing down. And this one has Y pointing up as well, right? So this joint is not facing the right way. It's not oriented the right way, okay? So what I need to do is I need to fix that so that Y is pointing up on this joint. Now, I can see that. I can see these orientations fairly easily, right? Rather than using, these little handles to see it, I can actually display that a little bit more prominently. I can go to Display, Transform Display, Local Rotation Axes, AXES, plural for axis. Display, Transform Display, Local Rotation Axes. If I say menus twice or 3 times, that means you should be writing it down. Display, Transform Display, Local Rotation Axes.
Say after transform display.
Local Rotation Axes. And again, when I'm taking notes, when I'm doing menus, right, I usually do it like this, right? Display, transform, display, local, rotation, axes, right? So using these little arrows is a quick way to, denote your menus. And then if you have an options box, you can just draw something like that, right? That way you know that you have to actually open up the options box, right? Okay, so this is, good note-taking, in my opinion, right? Whatever works for you is fine, but that's how I do it. Or you could just use a hyphen, but that can get, confusing if you have a hyphen in a name. So anyway, so if I do display, transform display, local rotation axes, it shows you the X, Y, and Z of each joint that you have selected. This only applies to the selected joints, right? And you'll see the Y is facing up, the Z is facing back, the X is facing towards the next joint. Here, X is facing towards the next joint, but Z is forward and Y is down, right? So this joint, is out of orientation. Now, there's multiple ways that you can fix this. The menu related way is if I go to skeleton, orient joint, and pull up the options box. Now, this is the orient joint options, right? Whatever it does when it creates the joint is the default. Okay? It thinks it's right. So if it orients this incorrectly and I reset my settings, right? If I click this to try and fix it, it's not going to do anything because it thinks that it's correct, right? So using the default settings here to fix it when it did it by default is not going to work, right? You need to adjust that, right? So the primary axis is the x-axis, right? That's what's going from parent to child in my joint hierarchy, right? From shoulder to elbow, elbow to wrist, wrist to hand, right? Okay, so that's the primary axis. We should have that be on X unless otherwise stated, okay, by default. The secondary axis is, in this case, the Y, right? My secondary axis is positive Y, right? And if I set this on this joint from positive to negative, because positive wasn't working because that was the default, and I hit apply, watch this joint, right? Watch this little axis here. It didn't do nothing. Why didn't it do nothing? It should have done something. Here, hold on. A negative. Oh, sorry. I created the problem by switching it to negative, so I need to switch it to positive. I apologize for that. Click apply, boom, done. So whatever it was, if you do the opposite of that, it will flip the direction, right? So in this case, Y is positive, Z is that direction, is back, right? If I switch this to negative, it'll flip it the other direction, right? Okay. So this takes a while to get used to. Joint orientations can be tricky. But most importantly, what you want to make sure of is that in a chosen chain, right, from shoulder to fingertip, or from the bottom of the spine to the top of the neck, right, all of your joints should be oriented along a specific chain the same direction. Now, I showed you the arm because the arm I knew was going to be fine. I tested it and it was. And I wanted to show you how to create the problem so that you could fix the problem. The spine, however, may not be right. I have a feeling that it is because I created it on the grid, but it may not be because I couldn't specifically make it as straight as I wanted to because I was creating it on a side view. Usually orientations get flip-flopped when you have created them with a little bit of a zigzag, right? So the fact that I was creating this on the side view may have created a little bit of a zigzag in my spine, which may have created reversed orientations, right? So if I take this and I select my hierarchy and I display transform local rotation axes, I got almost lucky, right? All my X's are going the right direction, and they live in Texas, but that's a whole other thing. All my Z is going the same direction. All my Y is going the same direction, except when I get to this joint right here, this neck O2 joint has Z going to my right, his left, when all the rest of the spine is going to his right, my left, right? So this joint right here is actually facing the wrong direction as far as its orientation is concerned. And again, just to create the problem on the spine so that you can see what this looks like, I'm going to reorient my joint the wrong direction. I'm going to do this joint in the dead center, and I'm going to set that to negative instead of positive. And if I select this joint, shift click up to the neck, I rotate this on Z, it should create a nice arc. What I'm getting is an accordion, right? You don't want your back to bend like this when you bend over to tie your shoes. That would hurt. What you want is a nice arc in your spine, right? Okay, so that's what orientation problems represent. And you can see it again on the local rotation axis. These two have Z going to his right. This one, Z is going to his left because I created that problem. That same problem is at the base of the head on that neck O2 joint, okay? So I'm going to undo, actually, I'm just going to fix this joint. Again, skeleton, orient joint, I'm going to pull up the options. And again, by default, I haven't mentioned this before, but in the options window, by default, it says orient children of selected joints, right? That means that if I fix this joint, it's going to apply that same fix to every other joint in the hierarchy below it, right? I don't want to do that. I only want to fix this joint, so I deactivated the checkbox for orient children of selected joint, okay? So in this case, I created the problem by setting this to negative. I'm going to set it back to positive, and I'm going to hit apply. And you'll see my Z will pop to the other side. My Y will pop to the back. Boom. Done. Okay. So this joint's fixed. I always will test it, so I'll come back and test it after I fix this joint. This joint, again, Z is going left here, Z is going left here, Z is going to the right here. So I need to set, in this case, it thinks it's right. So I need to set my positive to negative and hit apply. And now Z is going the same direction as the rest. Okay. And this is only important in chain style joints, right? I don't have to worry about the jaw because it's going to rotate from the base only. None of these other joints are going to rotate. They're there for skinning. I don't need it on the mandible. That's just there for skinning. I don't need it on the eyeball joint. That's only there for skinning. Okay? So I only need it along the arm, along the spine, and along the legs when we get legs. Okay? Or if you have an octopus and you have tentacles, you need it in the tentacles. You need, anything that has a long chain that needs to bend properly. So I'm going to shift click. I'm going to select the base joint, my main spine joint. I'm going to shift click each of these joints all the way up to the base of the head, the end of the neck. And when I rotate forward, I should create a nice, beautiful arc. See what I mean? Just like that. Okay. Now, for the sake of everything's kind of confusing, I'm going to hide those axes. I'm going to select my hierarchy, display, transform display, local rotation axes. That deactivates all of them except for these three, which were activated when I displayed the others, so it inverted those. And I'm going to hit G to redo that same command. And that has hid those axes. Does this make sense as far as orient joints? Any questions on what that means? You online peeps. Okay. All of that's explained in the video that's being recorded right now as well. So you can always come back to that. Now, you want to do these orientations before you mirror your joints. Because if you have a problem on one side, you're going to mirror that problem to the other side, right? So you want to make sure to do the orientations on the arm, at the very least, before you mirror it to the other side. Now, pretty well, I've fixed some things, so I'm gonna save as. It's important to save as you go, right? And I've named my joints. So now I'm going to mirror them to the other side. So what I want to do is I want to select, you can only do these one at a time. I can't shift click and mirror, multiple joints at the same time, right? So I have to do the arm, and then I can do the eyeball after that, right? Okay. And again, we're only doing this on all of the right side joints, right? I have this one, eye right joint, right? We're not doing it on any of the center joints. So we select our first joint off the center, right? Whichever joint that happens to be. In this case, it's the clavicle 01R joint. And I'm going to go to skeleton, mirror joints, and I'm going to pull up my options box. Skeleton, mirror joints, options. Now, on this, what's cool about this is that I can search for something within my naming convention and replace it with something else. You've all done like search and replace in Word. It has that built in here. So if I search for underscore capital R underscore, I can replace it with underscore capital L underscore, and I don't have to go back in and rename anything. This is a beautiful thing, because when you have hundreds of joints, you don't want to have to go back in and rename everything. That's a pain, which means that you want to do your naming before you do your mirroring. Okay? I'm speaking from experience so that you don't have to learn from my mistakes, so that you can learn from my mistakes. You don't have to create the mistakes I made. You know what I mean. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of differences here in the different types of mirroring. Okay? I'm going to click apply. Okay? And this is based on behavior across XY, right? If I click apply, you'll notice it does mirror to the other side. So I know that XY is my correct direction for this mirroring. However, what's the difference between behavior and orientation? Well, again, when we test our orientation on this side, we selected the shoulder, shift select the elbow and the wrist, and re-rotated in, right? We have a nice arc. To test the other side and this side for proper setup, after we've selected these three, click, shift, click, keep holding down shift and do the other shoulder, elbow, and wrist. And when I rotate on Y, they should come in and touch like this. Okay? This is the proper orientation for the type of behavior that we want these joints to do. Okay? Is when you shift click from shoulder to wrist on both sides and rotate them together, they come in and touch. And when I do on Z, they go flying, right? Okay? If I undo this and show you the difference between that and orientation, click apply, it looks correct. But if I test it, shift click, shift click, shift click, shift click, shift click, and I rotate on Y, they go opposite. This is not correct. Okay? So you want to make sure that they come in and touch fingertips. I'm going to undo that.
So just make sure it's mirror function. That be mirror.
In this case, yes. Yeah. Okay. And if you notice that it does something like this, where you actually, let me undo that and apply, where it doesn't seem like it's actually mirrored, you've chosen the wrong mirror across, right? So it's basically just duplicated it in place. And if I do on XZ, it does this, right? So that's not correct either, okay? So in this case, XY, which is, if you look at the the orientation handle down here, it's you know, forward in X and up and down on Y, right? Based on behavior, and just mirror it. And again, as I said, here's my naming convention is now all clavicle L joint instead of R joint, and all of my naming convention is good. Now, here's a very big part of rigging. And this has to do with the 10 basic rules of rigging that you find in the introduction of your book, which will be on the exam at midterm, as I said before. Okay, so make sure that you memorize the 10 basic rules of rigging. You'll notice that these joints have translate information. I have a -0 on Y, I have a -46 on X, and if I go up here, you have -37, -33, -12, right? I have translate information. You do not want to freeze transformations on these joints. It requires them on translate. If you do this right, you shouldn't have any rotation information, right? But if you do change the position of your rotation on a joint, you do want to freeze transformations on the rotation if that's its default location, okay? So you don't want to freeze transformations on translate, but you do want to freeze it at its default location on rotate. So how do we do that? Well, you know about modify freeze transformations, but if you pull up the options box, you can deactivate translate. And it's fine to freeze on scale, but you could deactivate that as well. Okay. So if you want to know, if you're happy with the position of your joints and you want to make sure that they are all frozen rotations, you can select the first joint, select hierarchy, and freeze rotate only, click apply or freeze transform, something like that. Okay. You can also, I'm just going to reactivate that and close it. You can also right click over here anywhere, go to freeze, and go to rotate. Right? That will also do it. Okay? But again, you do not ever want to freeze transformations on the translate. Why? Well, here's the elbow. I'm going to do modify freeze transformations. It didn't freeze. Well, it's not allowing me. I have a feeling that perhaps Maya killed that capability. But what it used to do is it used to go like this. It used to move the joint to its previous joint, right? Because the translate X position is relative to its parent joint's position, right? So that's what freeze transformations used to do. I'm assuming that they've changed it to where you can't actually freeze translate on joints. I don't know. But it used to pop over to the previous joint. So yeah. Anyway, we've run out of time. Basically, these terminating joints are there, now that we've gone over orientations, are there simply to orient these joints out of the body, right? That's their only function. So I can take these end joints and delete them because they've done what they needed to do. And I also forgot to mirror this joint, so I'm just going to go ahead and skeleton mirror that joint. Again, I don't have to worry about behavior because it's just a stand-in, but I do want to make sure my right gets mirrored to my left. So this is my finished skeleton. I'm going to save as version 4. I will probably do a video to get a little bit into skinning, and then I'll continue skinning in class on Wednesday. Start laying out your skeleton, okay? You should have your skeleton placed by Wednesday, right? If you want to do this stuff and like not be like stressed at the end, I recommend placing your skeleton, getting as far as I have by Wednesday. And I'll put the video for this up as soon as it's done processing and I'm back from lunch or whatever. Okay. I'll be here this afternoon until 4. I'm here every single day.
Yes.
Yes. I'll be here tomorrow until noon, or actually till 1 o'clock.
Yeah, question.
Yep.
What room that you're gonna be in?
If I can be, I'll be here in B112.
Cause like I'm at the edge of breaking down, and like I got everything correct. It's just that I don't know how to, function this stuff.
Okay. Well, I'll do what I can to help you.
Okay.
See you, folks. What's up, man?
What's up?
This thing is really chugging. I don't know what's going on.
The computer or the?
Yeah, the computer.